Everybody, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and these are your November horoscopes. So this is the horoscope for Gemini for the month of November 2018. You can read this for your sun sign, your rising sign. Some people even read it for their moon signs. So, whoops, I somehow have Aries up. Let's get you up, Gemini. There you are. So the month really gets started on November 7th. That's the first big astrological transit of the month. On that day, you see a new moon taking place in your sixth house. Now, this is happening after a year of Jupiter being in your sixth house, after Venus just retrograde in your sixth house. And the sixth house was traditionally associated with labor, like hard work, as well as sickness, like sort of, and enslaved-like conditions, whether it's sickness or work, chronic, difficult conditions, as well as service. Now, we labor hard with, or we work hard on behalf of that which we feel is worth serving. That could be a cause, that could be on behalf of people who are suffering. The sixth house does have a service-oriented theme. Maybe the past year with Jupiter in the sixth, you've been learning a lot, growing a lot through service. Maybe you've been working a lot, learning a lot, working a lot, maybe not being recognized as much as you feel you could have been or should have been, but also, again, growth. Sometimes it's learning leaps and bounds, but with a lot of effort and labor. That's Jupiter in your sixth for the past year, about to change signs this month into Sagittarius. But the new moon here plants a seed and says, this month, you're turning a corner. A lot of hard work maybe that you've been putting in, or different kinds of challenges that you've been facing, but you now have a new resolve. You now have a new way of looking at things, a new way of doing things, a new sense of conviction, a renewed spirit of courage. There's maybe some of that energy coming through this month to help you. But it is a sixth house new moon month, which means there may be some more work-related themes, work service-related themes ahead. Sickness too sometimes, but usually it's chronic. It's stuff we're familiar with that kind of comes up and bugs us. Sometimes the new moon suggests that there's the ability to step forward and learn something new, start a new chapter, which can mean maybe there's some form of healing that's coming as well if you've been struggling with anything. Now, for much of the rest of the month, Venus is retrograde, has moved out of Scorpio and into the fifth house in Libra, and is opposing Uranus in Aries in your 11th house. That is the fifth house of creativity, of fun and pleasure and joy, also of children and pregnancy. And the 11th house, Uranus, is in the house of friends and groups and greater social allegiances, as well as ideals for the future. So it's a very interesting moment where your social life might be changing, relationships and friends could be changing. You could be in the process of experimenting with your artwork or your creative life, trying to kind of adjust or revise an aesthetic or a style. It's not unusual to see different forms of creative or eccentric collaboration, but also Venus opposite Uranus can bring up power struggles or creative conflicts in relationships, as well as the desire to be free from or rid of relationships that we feel are holding us back, where we'd like a greater degree of independence or freedom. So there can be some tensions in relationships ongoing with the Venus retrograde for the whole month. November 17th, Venus turns direct, which is a time where Venus starts gaining some positive momentum again. Venus moving forward in her motion is basically a time where Venus starts recovering, less of the kind of dramatic turns of fortune, reversals, breakdowns. Venus moving forward is an indication that things are turning a corner, and probably for the better. However, the 30th of the month, Venus will oppose Uranus one last time, bringing things to a head yet again. It might be a little bit better, like a final decision or a final choice or a creative culmination of some kind that's very innovative or interesting. Can be a little disruptive, though, and may, again, the theme of the month may be about carrying forward changes that really need to be made in relationships, especially related to themes like your creative life, your greater social allegiances or affiliations, but also possibly themes related to like children, pregnancy, things like that. So interesting Venus retrograde themes this month still, all through the month, basically. Now, going forward from this point on November 8th, pretty exciting transit. Jupiter will pop into the 7th house. After being in your 6th for a year, is a great labor of Jupiter and Scorpio in your 6th. A lot of deep, heavy, intense work in that house. Jupiter's getting a lot lighter and moving into your 7th house, into its home sign of Sagittarius, where expansion, growth, knowledge, wisdom, buoyancy, hope, optimism, faith, trust, blessings, all the good Jupiter stuff comes through a lot more powerfully and easily and in a much more lighter atmosphere than Jupiter and Scorpio. And it does so in the house of relationships with other people. This could be a year where you're growing by leaps and bounds because you meet someone, or because you're entering a new relationship, or because something's changing or evolving rapidly with a spouse or partner, or your relationship is just growing a lot. So an expansive year ahead with Jupiter entering the house of relationships and love. The other thing is that 7th house is traditionally, in some ways, just related with your social persona. So there's a moment here, you could say, where this is a season, I should say, where you may be ready to step out into the world in a new way. Now, as a Gemini, you're usually, a little elusive, changeable, sometimes a little flighty and indecisive. Jupiter and Sag in the 7th may bring you out into the world in more defined ways and more committed ways. And that may feel at times a little uncomfortable for you, but trust the process and be open to showing up in the world in more committed ways, maybe even in relationships. Okay, so that is Jupiter's entrance into Sagittarius. Another interesting transit to take a look at happens on November 15th. On that day, Mars will enter the sign of Pisces and move out of your 9th house, where it's been since middle of May, house of religion and the higher mind and so forth. And it'll be entering the house of your career. Well, Mars in your career house in Pisces may really sort of ignite action in your career. Could be a lot of hard work again, or it could be that there's just a theme of wanting to, kind of go get it. You may be ready to launch new projects, ready to receive a promotion, ready to basically assert yourself more in the public or in the workplace. There could be conflicts or different kinds of power struggles that start taking place in the workplace. That's the god of war entering the workplace. But also Mars in Pisces will bring themes of self-sacrifice or heroism, martyrs, saviors, victims. So you're thinking also about what is worth sacrificing for or compromising for, and what is not worth sacrificing for or compromising for, especially in the workplace. Now, those are themes that will last all the way through the month, and probably, I think, if I remember correctly, it's all the way into the new year. So a little bit of time to come there. Now, one interesting thing is that by the 19th, Mars will square Jupiter in your 7th house, which will heighten the tension between relationships and the workplace. It'll bring the two together in a powerful way right around the 19th. So you can watch for that. On the 17th, you can also see that on the 17th, Mercury in your 7th house of relationships is going to turn retrograde in a square to Neptune in Pisces in the 10th. Same two houses, relationships and work. Really focused on, same thing's going to happen around the full moon, we'll see in a minute. But the basically, Mercury is turning retrograde in the 7th house, time for revisions, changes, role reversals in relationships, breakdowns of communication, or the need to heal and transform your communication dynamics in a relationship. Also possible that communication and misunderstandings, both in relationships and possibly in the workplace, are a pronounced theme. You want to be very careful because Mercury square Neptune, not everything that you say or think is going to be clear, that you could be easily deceived, have the wool pulled over your eyes or pull the wool over somebody else's eyes. So you want to be careful, really clear boundaries, discernment, careful thinking around this one. However, this can be a very glamorous transit where, there's a kind of, sometimes people will have a 15 minutes of fame with something like this, or their voice is getting out to a larger audience in a glamorous or more public manner. Or there can be also public controversies or relational, in a sense, sort of scandals that kind of break out into the public a little bit more, like, the gossip that's behind someone's back that suddenly comes out and becomes a thing, and you have to deal with it. And so you want to be very careful of communication dynamics around Mercury retrograde, especially in both relationships, romantic, business partnerships, maybe the workplace as well. Again, it could be a time, where there is some ability to get a message out to a broader audience or something like that. So finally, on November 22nd into the 23rd, we see the full moon landing in your home sign of Gemini in your first house and creating tons of T-square tension with the 10th house of career and the 7th house of relationships. This is a big moment, this end of the month for you, because this is with Venus also moving to oppose Uranus toward the end of the month. This is a moment of getting clear about who you are, about what you value, about who you are and what others are demanding or expecting of you, and where you can compromise and where you can't compromise. There's a moment for real creative breakthrough and synthesis here, but it may be difficult. You may be finding that it's difficult to commit, or that you're a little conflicted about doing what other people are asking of you right now, or working the kinds of compromises that you need to make. And it might not just be you. It could be that other people are being really stubborn and difficult, not coming over to your side as much as they should. You could also see that this is a time where you have to define your beliefs or commitments a little bit more in ways that are may have greater consequences socially or professionally. That's not easy for Geminis in general. So you want to, again, the Mercury retrograde, it's a personal month of really sort of shifting, changing your mind, changing your perspective, especially in terms of how you relate to others and the greater world in a more public manner or a more professional manner. So that's what I've got for you this month, Gemini. I hope that this has been interesting. I look forward to hearing your stories if you'd like to share them in the chat space below the video, and also hope to see you month of December. I can't believe it. It's already coming up on December for the last horoscope of 2018. All right, we'll see you soon, Gemini. Take care. Bye.